Hi, I'm Owen Davis, founder of Pixelhaze Academy and SquareForge, and today we're going to be using SquareForge and I'm going to be demonstrating the starting templates we have with accordions and how we can manipulate and edit those to make our websites look more bespoke. I've already got the website open. This is the main version of SquareForge, which will be slightly different to the version that you get when you purchase it. And so if I click on edit, we can see that we have a range of layouts here all ready to go. Now I could choose to save any of these as a favorite. So we've got this option here, and let's go for this one as well. So 2 sections saved as favorites. This is the beauty of the Forge, is it's been designed to make this process much easier and to help you come up with inspiration without having to start everything from scratch. And so what we're going to do now is go to our playground, which is our test page that we've got on this site with loads of different layouts already in place. And we're going to remove some of these that are no longer required. If we're starting from scratch, we wouldn't need to do this, but let's just get rid of some of these formats and do a bit of housekeeping. Okay, so we've gone back to a blank page. This is what a page would look like when we just start out. And if I click on Add Section, instead of selecting one of the Squarespace presets, which I love these by the way, but I've got a little tired of them to be honest, and they haven't really changed since the start of Squarespace 7.1, or not noticeably anyway. So I'm going to go instead to Save Section, and we can see our 2 FAQ accordions have been saved. So if we go with this one first, and then we'll add a new section for the inverted option. There's absolutely nothing wrong with taking these and then putting in your own information. So for example, we can just double click on this section and edit these questions and put your own Q&As in place. You can clear them out. So let's trim these down just to see what it looks like with fewer questions in place. And we can click and then move up this section at the bottom. This is what I really like about the Fluid engine, is it's just that, fluid. But say we wanted to change the background color in this section, how would it affect the structure? So if I go to Edit Section, then I go to Colors, and we can see all of the different color sections that we've got. So I could make it bright blue. I use that color, which is a bit of a wild card in Squarespace because it's not part of the core color palette via the style settings. But let's go for maybe a slate grey color. I've deliberately made this template builder monochromatic, simply meaning that you can apply your own color scheme, color palette, and it already looks quite different. So that's just one option. We can change the styling, the background color behind the FAQ section. We can also readjust this FAQ block or accordion block. And say, for example, we wanted to add a new block in, maybe a line underneath FAQs. We can then click and drag that down. Say, for example, you wanted an introductory sentence to the left, which introduces these. Again, we can do that. So we click on Add Block, add a text block, and now we can move that into position. So I've just added in some placeholder text that I've got on a shortcut key. And now that's looking different already. However, we can see that the dividing lines here are a little bit compact. The text is coming too close for my taste to the accordion block. So let's edit the section. And from here, we can change the width of the gap. The default is 11. So let's increase this up to say 30 and see how that looks. With the guides removed by clicking off the settings, we can see now we've got a wider gap between this content, and that's where we can save. And let's now have a look at maybe changing some of the styling in this. So if I double click on this section, we go to Design, and we can see the titles are defaulting to heading 4. But what if we wanted to make that smaller and more compact? So we could go for paragraph 1 or even paragraph 2. And that already makes it look quite different. We can see here now that some of the spacing's gone out again because the text size is reduced, but the height of the block is the same. So we can again manually move that up and move our section up to make that look quite different. And I'll bring the original version back in on here in just a moment, just so we can see the comparison between the two. So we've got our offset FAQ heading. We can see the title overlaps, and if we were to put more text in, it would get in the way of that block. So I'm just going to remove that bounding box here and do a bit of housekeeping to make sure that looks good on both desktop and mobile as well. And let's go back into design now, and here We've got some options. For example, we can auto expand the first item, which is a feature I really like, especially when we don't have quite so many questions in our FAQ section, or when, as we've done with this one, just reduce the font size a little bit as well. Okay, let's have a look at some of the other options. We've got the arrow, but we can go to plus instead. We've got dividers. And we can change our thickness of our dividers or remove them completely. And I think this is a relatively new option, but we can increase the opacity of the dividing lines, which I really like. It was a bit frustrating. I used to have to do that via CSS. And a bit of custom code to override that setting, but it's nice to have it in the toolbar now as well. Also, the icon thickness, maybe a little bit thick for the design we're going for, so we can make that to the smallest thickness or thinnest option. And we can also change where the icon is positioned, left or right. If we look at the stroke that sits around that block, we can change the color of that as well, and indeed the thickness. So we could go back to a light border around it. And let's change the thickness down to just a 1 pixel border, which is the same then as the dividing line. So subtle difference, but that makes it look quite different already. So now let's look at adding in that other section. And this is what we started with, and this is where we took it by just a few tweaks. And the beauty of this is once we've changed our starting structure from the SquareForge, we can now save that section again, meaning when we go to add a new section on this or any other page, we've got both options. If we don't want the original anymore, we can click on it once and then go to the trash can icon and just delete it. It's still saved on the SquareForge section. So if I was to just jump across here, we can see all of the content options here. For example, the content accordion, and we can see it's still there. So even when we delete items from favorites, we've still got that original design, as long as we don't delete these pages. Okay, jumping back to our playground, let's have a look at this section here. I'm not going to do so much with this one. So we can see here that we've got actually a text introduction here. So again, we could offset this if we want to, or we could make it a 3-column format. So we can reduce the width of this accordion, and then likewise reduce the width of that text block. Move the contact us up so the call to action is below the text. And now we've got a very different looking layout, especially if I was to move this over. FAQs again is overlapping a little bit too far, so I'm just going to make that narrower. This is asymmetrical, so we're not having equal width columns either. And I think that's looking quite nice as an alternative layout with just a few tweaks. So once again, let's have a look at the original so we can compare them. Likewise, we can save that as a favorite if we want to keep that structure for other pages as well. The one thing we haven't done, which I'm going to do just now, is check these on mobile. So the version in the Forge should be working perfectly because they've all been tested for mobile. But we can see here, after adjusting it, we can see that this block is a little tight to the text section above it. So we can just move it down 1 block. And likewise, we can just check this as well. We can decide either to have the call to action at the bottom, as it is in this example, or we can move it up as well. But there we go. Accordions with a huge amount of flexibility, both in the accordion style editor or using the section editor. We could bring in images to go alongside them, especially on multi-column layouts. The limits are really your imagination. So now's the time for you to share your ideas with me. Send me a link to any websites that you built using the Forge and how you've manipulated the structures to make them more custom to you. And if you wanted to find out more about SquareForge, there's information in the description. Also, I'd like to invite you to find out more about our community that we're launching in the summer of 2024. If you'd like to find out more information, again, there's a link in the description to show how you can get involved. If you're finding yourself building websites with website builders like Squarespace, Wix, or hosting a website builder, that community could well be for you. Loads of exciting announcements down the line, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.